Hi, I'm Elaine Harding. Welcome to my blog.stampwithelaine.com. Goodness me, our time is really flying by, and now it's August. It's time for you to redeem your bonus day coupons. In the month of August, you can redeem all the bonus coupons you accumulated between the 1st and 31st July. Today I'm focusing on the watercolour pencils. This is assortment 2, and you can find it on page 179 in the annual catalogue. In this assortment we have Cherry Cobbler, Flirty Flamingo, Cajun Craze, Crushed Curry, Granny Apple Green, Garden Green, Coastal Cabana, Balmy Blue, Night of Navy, and Gorgeous Grape. Now the colours on here don't reflect the true colours in the lead. Don't come out quite like that. Just going to be using Cherry Cobbler, Flirty Flamingo and Cajun Craze. We're also going to be using the Stampin' Up markers. Again, this is in Cherry Cobbler, Flirty Flamingo and Cajun Craze. This is the card we'll be making, and I'm using a watercolouring technique with the watercolour pencils. The card base is Flirty Flamingo. This has been cut at 8 1/4 inches by 5 7/8 inches. In metric, that measures 21 centimetres by 14.85 centimetres, and it's been folded in half. We have a Cajun Craze layer. This measures 5 1/4 by 3 3/4, that's 13.3 centimetres by 9.5 centimetres. Shimmery white cardstock layer that goes on top of the Cajun Craze. This measures 5 inches by 3 1/2 inches, that's 12.7 centimetres by 8.9 centimetres. For the inside of the card we have a Whisper White card insert that measures 5 1/2 inches by 3 3/4 inches, that's 14 centimetres by 9.5 centimetres. The stamp set I'm using is called Tasteful Textures, and it's a cling stamp set. There are coordinating dies that go with it. If you purchase both of these together, it will save you 10%. You can find it on page 135 in the annual catalogue. You'll also need a spritzer filled with tap water and an aqua painter. I've mounted my blocks on a C block and D block. Cajun Craze ink pad, petal pink rhinestone gems. We also need a Wink of Stella pen and something to protect your work surface. So I'm just going to put kitchen towel onto my work surface. First, take your pencils and lightly scribble in random across your shimmery white cardstock. Use the flat of the lead rather than the pointy end, so you don't get harsh lines. I think this is the Cherry Cobbler. And followed by the Cajun Craze. Next I'm going to spritz it with water, and you make sure the nozzle is pointed away from you, directly at the cardstock and not at you. You don't want water squirting in your eye. And I'm also going to wet the back as well so that it won't curl up. Next I'm going to take my aqua painter and I'm just going to wet the brush tip. Then I'm just going to scribble along my paper to activate the watercolour pigment from the watercolour pencils. Now you can see that I'm still having lines. Now if I want to eradicate that, I just wet the paper and I'll pick up the pigment from directly from the lead in the pencil and apply it to my paper. Clean my brush before I go on to the next colour. squeeze it a little bit to add some water. Now you can see the lines are starting to go now. They're less visible. Can you see that? Now normally I will allow this to dry naturally, but because we're doing a video, I'm going to speed up the process with a heat tool, and I'll speed this up. Next I'm going to use my stamp and write markers to ink up my stamp. Now I want it to be different colours in different patches randomly, so make sure you start with the lightest colour first. Now on a marker you will see that there's a thick line here which indicates that's the brush end, and a smaller thinner line here which is the journaling end. That's the journal end, and this is the brush end. So we want the brush end. So starting with the lightest colour, I'm just going to ink it up randomly. You don't want your brush tip to be contaminated by the darker inks. So which is darker? I'll start with the Cajun Craze. And then the Cherry Cobbler, just round the edges. Now I'm going to wet my paper again, but not too much. And I'll just stamp an image here. One there, and maybe one here. Oh dear, I forgot to press record. I'd used my heat tool and dried the shimmery white cardstock up, so now we're ready for some die cutting. Now this has retired, this Stamp-A-Majig, but I don't trust myself to stamp straight, so I'm going to use it to stamp my sentiment up here. Make sure that's straight, and this is straight. Then I'll put my tool there, ink up the sentiment in Cajun Craze and stamp. Just a little recap, if you've never used one before, basically what it is a crossbar, which they call the T-bar, and there's a white plastic sheet or an opaque plastic sheet that you butt up to the right angle of the T-bar. When you mount your stamps, you stamp it onto the imaging sheet, and so that should enable you to stamp straight on to your project. Now it's time to do some die cutting, so I'm going to use this die to die cut an aperture here. So I need to see how far down that is. It's about 1.5 inches. So if I measure 1.5 inches to make sure it doesn't partially die cut the sentiment I've just stamped at the top, make sure that's in equal distance between there and there. Grab a pencil and roughly trace around the image here. And the reason I'm doing this, it's really rough, so you won't see it anyway, but I've drawn an image here because I want to put double-sided tape on the back, and I need to cover up because we haven't got the adhesive sheets anymore, which is a jolly nuisance. I found those so useful, but Stampin' Up are not carrying it anymore. So I just want to use some adhesive tape on the back so it makes it easier for me to glue it down to the project. If I can find the card. You see these little fine pieces here. If you put glue on it, the glue might just seep out and it would spoil the effect. So this is a tip. If you put Terran tape on the back, then when you die cut the aperture, you've already got the adhesive sheet on the back of the image. So bring in my magnetic platform, base cutting plate and the die, and then top cutting plate, and I'm ready to run it through the big shot. So I'll do that off camera. So there's my aperture cut out, and I'm just going to mark with a pencil the tips here. So that will give me an idea of where I should do my wink of Stella. Give it a good shake, and then where the marks are, I make sure I've covered it with wink of Stella. Make sure it's dry before you glue it on. Take all the adhesive bits off. I've taken all the backing strips off, and I'm just going to offer it up to the Cajun Craze card layer. Make sure I've got an even border all round, and when I'm happy with that, then I can remove the rest of the backing strip. Grab one of these gems and pop it in the middle. I can then adhere this piece to the card front. And then with the marker pens again, I'm just going to scribble with the lightest one first, followed by Cajun Craze. And then Cherry Cobbler last. I'm going to stamp off and then stamp on, and do the same with this linear stamp as well. Stamp off, stamp on, and then adhere it to the inside. And there's the finished card. I hope you've enjoyed today's tutorial. Thanks for joining me today, and do subscribe if you haven't already. Give me a thumbs up if you like it, and you'll find the supplies list in the show more section below this video. Bye!